The gate at Kestrel Station smelled like ozone and boot polish, and Sarah hated it already. She stood in line with the other new cadets, duffel bags slung over one shoulder, watching the holographic queue numbers tick down. Around her, voices murmured in a dozen accents shaped by a dozen worlds. Titan drawl, series clip, the sing-song lilt of the Europa colonies. She was the only one who sounded like she'd walked out of a Nebraska cornfield, because she had. Earth stock, said a cadet behind her, not quite whispering. He had the lean, long-limbed build of someone raised in half-gravity, and he looked at Sarah the way people look at furniture that's blocking a doorway. They still let those through. Diversity quota, said his friend. Every intake needs one legacy case. Makes the recruiting posters look nice. Sarah kept her eyes forward. She'd heard worse in basic processing. Earth hadn't mattered in galactic affairs for 80 years. Not since the assembly formed. Not since 100 colonized worlds outpaced the cradle they'd come from. Earthborn recruits were rare, and rarer still were the ones who made it past the first physical. Low-grav muscle atrophy. Slow reflexes, by post-human standards. Immune systems tuned to a single, overprotected biosphere. The word behind her back was fragile. The line moved. Sarah stepped up to the scanner. It was a simple thing, an arch of blue light that read genome, augment history, and clearance in about 4 seconds. Every cadet ahead of her had walked through to a soft chime and a green flash. Sarah walked through, and the arch flooded red. Earthborn, do not engage. The words hung in the air in blocky emergency script, and for a moment the whole processing hall went quiet enough that Sarah could hear the recycled air hissing through the vents. Then the laughter started. Do not engage, the half-gravity cadet repeated, delighted. They coded her like a bomb. Maybe she is one, someone else said. Boom. There goes recruitment numbers. Sarah's face burned, but she didn't move. She'd learned a long time ago that flinching just fed it. She stood in the red light with her chin level and her hands loose at her sides, and she waited for someone with actual authority to come explain the malfunction, because it had to be a malfunction. She was a nobody. 23 years old, a farm kid from a town so small it wasn't on assembly maps, who tested well enough on the aptitude exams to get a slot nobody else wanted. There was no reason for a station-wide security marker to care about her. A cadet named Mike broke off from the crowd and jogged over. He was Titan-born, broad through the shoulders in that way heavy grav worlds produced, and up until that moment Sarah had pegged him as just another voice in the general noise. He didn't laugh, though. He walked around the arch, frowning at the readout like it had personally offended him. That's not a malfunction code, he said, mostly to himself. Malfunctions throw amber. This is a hard-coded flag. Somebody put your name in a system on purpose. Great, Sarah muttered. So I'm flagged and it's real. Do not engage isn't a threat warning, Mike said slowly, working through it. I've seen this pattern before in my uncle's old service logs. It's a containment tag, command level. The kind they slap on assets they don't want touched by anyone without clearance. He looked up at her, and for the first time in this entire miserable morning, someone was looking at Sarah like she was a puzzle instead of a punchline. Sarah, what's your last name? Reyes, she said. Why does that? She didn't get to finish, because that was when the hall's far doors hissed open, and every cadet in line snapped to attention out of pure animal instinct. Because the woman who walked through wore 4 stars on her collar and the kind of composed, unhurried stride that only came from decades of being obeyed. Fleet Admiral Okonkwo Vasquez. Sarah recognized her from recruitment briefings, the way you recognize a mountain from a photograph. Real, but abstract, not something that was supposed to be standing 10 feet away from you. The Admiral didn't look at the laughing cadets. She looked at the red arch, and then at Sarah, and something in her expression flickered. Not surprise, exactly. Recognition, long delayed. Reyes, she said. Sarah Reyes. Kestrel Colony Transfer Manifest, out of Nebraska Sector, Earth. Yes, ma'am, Sarah said, because it seemed like the only safe thing to say. Do you know why that scanner just flagged you? No, ma'am. I don't have a record. I've never even left the solar system before this transfer. I know, the Admiral said. That's exactly why. She turned to address the hall, and her voice carried without her raising it at all, the way voices do when they belong to people who have never needed to shout. 81 years ago, she said, before most of you were born, before most of your parents were born, the assembly ran a classified genomic survey of Earth's population, looking for a specific marker, a mutation cluster tied to radiation resistance, cellular repair speed, and neuroplasticity under extreme stress. It shows up in maybe 1 in 400 million humans. We call it, informally, the cradle marker, because it seems to only occur in populations that never left the planet of origin. Something about unmediated exposure to Earth's specific radiation and magnetic environment over enough generations. She paused. We flag every carrier the instant they're identified, anywhere in assembly space, with a do not engage order, because carriers have an unfortunate history of getting recruited by less scrupulous factions before we can reach them first. The hall was silent now in an entirely different way. Cadet Reyes, the Admiral continued, your blood was sampled during your Earth medical intake 11 months ago, standard procedure, and flagged in our archive. The scanner just caught up to the paperwork. You are, as of this moment, the 7th living confirmed carrier in assembly records, and the first one we've had walk voluntarily into a cadet line since the Kryvex incident. A ripple went through the older officers behind her at that name. The cadets, clearly, had no idea what it meant, which seemed to be exactly how the Admiral liked it. Do not engage doesn't mean dangerous. It means, this person does not get bumped, does not get hazed, does not get lost in a random duty rotation, because we do not have 7 of these to spare. It means she goes exactly where I say she goes. The half-gravity cadet who'd made the bomb joke had gone the color of skim milk. The Admiral looked back at Sarah, and something almost like warmth crossed her face. Earth stopped matching to galactic power a long time ago, cadet. Convenient thing to forget is that Earth is still where humanity comes from. Every so often, it reminds us it's still capable of producing something the rest of us can't replicate. She extended a hand, not a salute, an actual handshake, old-fashioned and Earthborn itself. Welcome to Fleet Sciences Division. You're not going to basic infantry rotation. You're coming with me. Sarah shook her hand, throat too tight to manage more than, yes, ma'am. And behind her the cadets who'd been laughing 30 seconds earlier were now studying the floor with tremendous interest. Mike caught her eye as the Admiral turned to lead her out, and he gave her a small, genuine grin, the kind that wasn't laughing at anything. Told you it wasn't a malfunction, he said. You did, Sarah admitted, and for the first time since she'd stepped off the transport, she let herself smile back. The red light faded from the arch behind her, already forgotten by everyone who mattered. Sarah Reyes walked out of the processing hall not as the Earthborn nobody, but as the first name in a story the galaxy hadn't finished writing yet. And somewhere in the vast, indifferent dark between the stars, that was exactly the kind of story humanity had always been best at telling.